Welcome to Confessions Unraveled, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered truths that shape the human heart. Today we're joined by a woman whose story is a labyrinth of ambition, coercion, and moral turmoil. Thank you for being here. Let's start with you introducing yourself. Who are you, and what brought you to Apex Innovations?
I'm Emily, 27 now, but this began when I was 26. Scraping by with temp jobs, barely covering rent, my student loans a constant weight. I've always been driven. Up at dawn, hitting the gym, eating clean to keep my energy up. I took pride in my appearance, curvy, polished, confident, thinking it would help me stand out. Apex Innovations, a tech giant in San Francisco, was my big break. A junior analyst role in their glass and steel headquarters. That first day, walking through the marble lobby, I felt like I'd finally arrived.
That sounds like a moment of triumph. Can you paint a picture of that first day?
It was overwhelming, like stepping into another world. The lobby was a cathedral of ambition, gleaming marble floors, massive screens flashing Apex's latest AI breakthroughs, people in sharp suits moving with purpose. I wore a fitted navy blazer, a pencil skirt, my hair in a sleek bun, heels clicking nervously on the marble. I clutched my portfolio, replaying my interview answers in my head, terrified I'd slip up. I was broke. Overdue rent, no savings, student loans piling up. This job was my lifeline, my chance to prove I could make it.
You were clearly driven. When did you first meet James Carter, the CEO?
My first week. James was magnetic. Mid-40s, tall, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. His suits were tailored to perfection, his smile a mix of charm and control. I'd seen him in tech magazines, always with his wife, Eleanor, this elegant woman with flawless poise, and their 2 kids, all private school Polish. He gave a welcome speech to us new hires, his voice low, commanding, promising we'd change the world. He shook my hand after, held it a second too long, his eyes lingering. I thought it was just his charisma, nothing more.
A striking first impression. When did you sense something was off?
About 2 weeks in. I was killing myself to prove I belonged, staying late, triple-checking every dataset, every slide. My reports were solid, but James started singling me out. He'd summon me to his corner office, all glass walls and city views, and tear into my work. "This isn't Apex quality, Emily," he'd say, his tone sharp enough to cut. Once he redlined my entire presentation in front of the senior team, their eyes on me like I was a failure. I went home, cried in my tiny apartment, bills stacked on the counter, wondering if I'd made a mistake taking the job.
That sounds brutal. How did you handle that kind of pressure?
Barely. I'd drag myself home, work until my eyes burned, trying to fix things that weren't broken. My rent was late, my loans a noose around my neck, and I had no safety net. I couldn't lose this job. James's critiques got personal. He'd comment on my appearance saying, "You look good, Emily, but you need to step up your game." His eyes would linger on my figure, my dresses, and my skin prickled, but I told myself it was nothing. I had to keep my head down, keep going.
That's heartbreaking. Can you take us to that first encounter?
That night, in his office. He closed the distance between us, kissed me. The city's skyline glittering through the glass behind him. His hands were confident, possessive, sliding down my back, pulling me against him. It was intense, overwhelming. Like he knew exactly how to make me feel both wanted and powerless. The air was thick with his cedarwood cologne, the faint hum of the city below. I felt sick, but there was this pull, this twisted allure to his power, his attention. I went home after. Stood in the shower for an hour, the water scalding, trying to scrub away the feeling of his hands, his breath on my neck.
That sounds like a storm of emotions. How did the affair unfold from there?
It became a dark routine, like a rhythm I couldn't escape. Late-night meetings, once or twice a week, sometimes in his office, sometimes elsewhere. The first hotel was the Four Seasons, a suite with silk sheets, a silver bucket chilling champagne. He'd sent a car, a black SUV with tinted windows, and a red dress, form-fitting, clinging to every curve, something I'd never buy myself. I stepped out, my heels sinking into the plush carpet, and he opened the door, his eyes raking over me, saying, "You're stunning, Emily." I felt like a prize, not a person. That night, he was gentle at first, whispering how special I was, his hands tracing my skin. But it was always about control. I lay there after, staring at the ceiling, hating myself.
That's so heavy. Can you share another vivid encounter that captures the intensity?
8 months in, at the Ritz-Carlton. He'd sent a car, as usual, and I arrived to find a suite with rose petals scattered on the bed, Dom Perignon on ice, the air heavy with jasmine from a diffuser. I wore a black, off-the-shoulder dress he'd chosen, so tight I could barely breathe, the fabric cool against my skin. He was waiting, in a silk robe, his eyes dark with intent. He poured me a glass, his fingers brushing mine, saying, "You're perfect, Emily. You make all this worth it." We moved to the balcony, the city sprawling below, his hands on my hips, whispering promises, better projects, a corner office. I felt like I was floating and drowning at the same time, caught in his spell, yet repulsed by myself for staying.
That contrast is vivid. Luxury and entrapment. How did you feel leaving that night?
Like I'd left a piece of myself behind. I took a cab home, the driver silent, the city lights blurring through tears. I kept thinking of my old self, the girl who ran 5 miles at dawn, studied late, believed hard work was enough. She was gone, replaced by someone who wore his dresses, drank his champagne, and hated every second. I didn't sleep, just sat on my couch, clutching a wine glass, wondering how I'd let it get this far. My apartment was dark, the only sound the hum of the fridge, and I felt so alone.
That loss of self is so poignant. How did this affect your work environment?
It was like living a double life. By day, I was a rising star, leading meetings, presenting to clients, getting praise for my instincts. 3 months in, I led a pitch for a major client, unheard of for a junior analyst. But every compliment felt like a transaction. James would watch me in boardrooms, his eyes lingering, a smirk playing on his lips. Colleagues noticed. Some envied me. Others whispered. One guy, Mark, asked outright if I was sleeping my way up. I laughed it off, my face burning, but it stung. I felt like I was wearing a scarlet letter, visible to everyone but me.
That isolation sounds crushing. Did you ever try to push back against James?
4 months in, I was exhausted, my guilt eating me alive. I told him I wanted out, that it felt wrong, for me, for his wife, for everything. He didn't get angry, just gave me this cold, amused smile, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "You're free to walk, Emily," he said. "But you know how this industry works. People who don't play the game don't last." The next day, my biggest project was reassigned, and I got an HR email about performance concerns. I panicked, went to his office, begged him to reconsider. He agreed, but only after I went back to him, his hands on me again, his voice low and triumphant.
That's coercion, plain and simple. How did you cope with the guilt?
I didn't. I'd go home, pour wine, 2 glasses, then 3, just to sleep. I'd stand in front of my mirror, hating the woman staring back. My body, my curves, my face, the things I'd worked so hard to maintain felt like a curse. I kept picturing Eleanor, her perfect smile in company newsletters, her kids' faces and photos on his desk. I'd imagine her finding out, looking at me with disgust, and it'd make me want to disappear. I started skipping meals, letting my gym routine slip, like I could make myself less desirable to him.
That self-loathing sounds excruciating. Did anyone at work know or suspect?
My friend Sarah, another analyst. She saw me leaving his office one night, my hands shaking, makeup smudged. She pulled me aside the next day, asked if I was okay. I lied, said it was just work stress, but she wasn't convinced. Over coffee, she told me she'd heard rumors about James, about other women before me. I shut down, too ashamed to admit it. I didn't want her to see me as weak, or worse, as someone who'd chosen this.
You were trapped, not choosing. How did this affect your life outside the office?
I became a shell. I stopped calling my parents, avoided friends. They'd text asking why I was so distant, why I looked so tired. I blamed deadlines, long hours. My apartment became a prison, empty takeout containers, unpaid bills I could now afford but barely noticed. I stopped going to the gym as much. My body felt like his tool, not mine. I'd lie awake, wondering if I'd brought this on myself. My tight dresses, my smile, my ambition. I hated that I even thought that.
That self-blame is so painful. Can you share another encounter that felt particularly intense?
A company gala 6 months in. Black tie, on a rooftop overlooking the bay. I wore a dress he'd sent. Emerald green, plunging neckline, clinging to every curve. Heads turned as I walked in. James's eyes locked on me, a hungry edge to them. Eleanor was there, radiant in a cream gown, laughing with clients. I saw them together, his hand on her back, and my stomach churned. I hid in the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, telling myself to quit. Then James found me, pulled me into a shadowed corner by the elevators. He kissed me, hard, his hands gripping my waist, his wife in the next room. I let him. God help me, my body responding even as my heart screamed to stop.
That's gut-wrenching. How did that moment shape your view of yourself?
It broke something in me. I'd always been proud of my discipline, my drive, the way I carried myself. But that night, I felt like a fraud, a homewrecker hiding behind a pretty face. I stopped looking in mirrors for weeks after. I'd catch glimpses of myself, my curves, my polished makeup, and feel like they weren't mine anymore. They were his creation, his weapon. I started wearing looser clothes, skipping makeup, like I could make myself invisible to him.
That's devastating. Can you share another encounter that captures the affair's intensity?
A thunderstorm hit San Francisco, 9 months in. He called me to his office, 10 p.m., rain lashing the windows, the city a blur of lights and water. The office was dark, just a desk lamp glowing, papers scattered, a half-empty Scotch bottle glinting. He pulled me onto his lap, his hands rough under my blouse, his breath warm with liquor. He said, "You're mine, Emily." Like it was a vow, his voice low and possessive. The storm raged outside, thunder shaking the glass, mirroring the chaos in me. I went home, soaked, standing in my doorway, shivering, feeling like I'd never be clean again.
That's so vivid. How did that moment affect you long term?
It made me realize I was losing myself. I started having nightmares. James's voice, his hands, Eleanor's eyes staring through me. I'd wake up sweating, checking my phone for his texts, terrified he'd call, terrified he wouldn't. I felt like a puppet, my strings in his hands. I stopped planning for the future. My dreams of leading a team, starting a company, felt like relics of another life. I was just surviving, day by day, tethered to him.
That loss is profound. Can you share another scene that stands out?
A weekend work trip to a coastal resort in Monterey. 11 months in, he'd booked a private villa, waves crashing outside, candles flickering on every surface. I wore a white dress he'd sent, sheer, almost translucent, the ocean breeze cool against my skin. He poured wine, his fingers grazing my neck, saying, "You make me feel alive, Emily." It was intoxicating, his attention, the luxury. But I felt like a prisoner in a gilded cage. After, lying in that massive bed, I stared at the ceiling, imagining running into the ocean, letting it swallow me whole. I felt so small, so trapped.
That's haunting. How did that shape your view of the affair?
It showed me how deep I was in. I'd let myself believe for fleeting moments that he cared, that I was special. But it was a lie. He'd go back to Eleanor, to his perfect life, while I carried the weight. I started noticing other women at work, new hires, young, pretty, his eyes lingering on them. I felt jealous, then sick for feeling it. I tore up that white dress when I got home, ripping it to shreds, but it didn't free me. I was still his.
That's raw. Can you share another moment that captures the toll this took?
A board meeting, a year in. I was presenting a new AI model, feeling confident for once, my slides sharp, my voice steady. James interrupted, praising me, but his eyes were possessive, his smirk smug. Later, he called me to his office, locked the door, and kissed me against his desk. Papers scattering, his hands under my skirt. I pushed him away, said I couldn't do this anymore, that it was killing me. He laughed, said, "You're too deep in, Emily. You think you can walk away clean." He offered a bonus, a bigger office, said he'd take care of me. I stayed quiet, and he took it as surrender.
That's manipulation at its core. How did that moment linger with you?
It crushed me. I went home, poured a drink, and stared at my new apartment. Leather couch, floor-to-ceiling windows, all paid for with his money. I felt like a fraud, living a life I hadn't earned. I kept replaying his laugh, his words, wondering if he was right, if I was too deep to escape. I started avoiding mirrors entirely, afraid of the woman I'd see. I'd wake up in a panic, checking my phone, dreading his next text, but needing the security it brought.
That's heart-wrenching. Can you share another encounter that felt pivotal?
A late night in his office, 13 months in. Snow was falling outside, rare for San Francisco, blanketing the city in eerie silence. He'd sent everyone home but kept me there, reviewing data. The lights were low, his desk cluttered, a scotch bottle half empty. He pulled me close, his hands under my blouse, whispering, "You're my escape, Emily." His breath was warm, his grip firm, the snow muffling the world outside. I felt like a ghost, my body responding but my heart empty. I went home, stood in the snow, letting it soak my coat, wishing I could freeze time and undo it all.
That's haunting. How did that affect your sense of self?
It made me feel like I was disappearing. I'd always been proud, my discipline, my ambition, my body, but now I felt like a shadow, existing only for him. I stopped caring about myself, skipped workouts, ate junk, let my hair go unwashed. I wanted to be invisible, to stop being the woman he wanted. But he didn't care. He'd call and I'd show up, because I didn't know how to stop without losing everything.
That's devastating. Can you share another scene that captures the affair's complexity?
A client meeting in Seattle, 10 months in. It was just us, a penthouse suite at the Fairmont, overlooking Puget Sound. A black lace dress waited on the bed, champagne chilling, the room warm with candlelight. He was gentler that night, talking about his marriage, saying Eleanor didn't get him anymore. I let myself believe it was real, that he cared, his hands soft on my skin, his voice low and earnest. But then he took a call from her, stepped onto the balcony laughing, saying he loved her. I sat there, in that dress he'd chosen, feeling like nothing, the champagne bitter in my mouth.
That's a stark moment. How did it shape your view of your role in his life?
It made me feel disposable, like a toy he'd pick up and put down. I'd spent years building myself, my discipline, my body, and it was just his currency. I started noticing how he looked at other women at work. New hires with bright eyes and tight dresses. I felt jealous, then disgusted with myself for caring. I went home and trashed that lace dress, stuffing it in the garbage, but it didn't change anything. I was still trapped, still his.
That's so raw. Can you share another moment that pushed you toward breaking free?
An elevator ride. A year in. We were heading to a client meeting, just us and 2 colleagues in the cramped space. His hand grazed my back, hidden by his briefcase, his fingers lingering on the curve of my spine. I froze, my heart racing, praying no one noticed. That night, I told him I was done, that I couldn't live like this. He smirked, said, "You'll come back, Emily. You always do." He was right. The next day, he assigned me a high-profile project, and I stayed silent, hating myself for it.
That's chilling. How did that moment affect your sense of agency?
It made me feel powerless. I'd always thought I was in control, my work, my body, my life. But he'd taken that from me. I started second-guessing every decision, every outfit, every smile. I'd walk into meetings wondering if people knew, if they saw me as the CEO's mistress. I felt like I was acting a part, not living my life. I stopped dreaming about the future because every step forward was his victory, not mine.
That's profound. Can you share another encounter that captures the affair's toll?
A company retreat in Napa Valley 12 months in. He insisted I come, said it was essential for my growth. We stayed at a vineyard estate, rolling hills, candlelit dinners. He booked my room next to his, separate from the team. One night, after everyone was asleep, he knocked, a bottle of wine in hand. We sat on my balcony, the air warm, crickets humming. He talked about his life, his marriage, how Eleanor was distant, how he needed me. I let myself imagine we were real, not a secret. But then he kissed me, his hands demanding, and it was all control again. I felt like a prop in his fantasy.
That's complex. Moments of connection twisted by power. How did it linger?
It haunted me. I kept replaying his words about Eleanor, wondering if he'd said them to others before me. I started watching him at work. How he charmed new hires, his hand lingering on their shoulders. I felt jealous, then sick for feeling it. I went home and trashed the dress he'd sent for the retreat, tearing it to pieces. But it didn't free me. I was still his, still caught in his web.
That's heart-wrenching. When did you start considering exposing him?
A year in. I'd just gotten a promotion. Junior manager, my own office, a salary I never dreamed of. Everyone congratulated me, but I knew what it cost. One night, in my new apartment, leather couch, city views, paid for with his money, I found an anonymous HR form online. I started typing, my hands trembling, detailing everything. The 4 seasons, the gala, the threats. I wrote about the red dress, the elevator, the snowy night, but I couldn't hit send. I'd lose my job, my reputation. He'd spin it, make me the seductress. And the money. I'd paid off my loans, bought nice things. It was dirty, but it was security.
That's an impossible choice. What stopped you from hitting send?
Fear, mostly. Fear of him, of being blacklisted, of everyone knowing. And greed, I guess. I'd look around my apartment, the view, the designer clothes, and hesitate. I'd imagine confronting him, watching him fall, but then I'd see my life crumbling. I told myself I could handle it, that I was in control, but I was lying. He owned me, and I let him.
That's raw. Can you share another moment that pushed you toward exposing him?
I overheard a conversation in the break room 14 months in. 2 women, junior hires, talking about James, how he'd been extra attentive to one of them, offering late-night mentoring. My stomach dropped. I saw myself in her, the same trap waiting. That night, I opened the HR form again, typed more details. The Monterey Villa, the Seattle trip, but I imagined the fallout. HR dismissing me, James retaliating, my name dragged through the mud. I closed my laptop, poured another drink, and cried.
That's a heavy realization. How did it affect your view of the affair?
It made me see the pattern. I wasn't special. I was just the latest in a line of women he'd used. I started noticing more. How he'd linger near new hires, his smile too familiar. I felt angry, not just at him, but at myself for staying. I wanted to warn them, to save them, but I was too scared. I'd become part of his machine, complicit in my silence.
That's a painful awakening. Can you share another scene that captures the affair's seductive pull?
A client dinner, 15 months in. He'd sent a sapphire necklace, heavy and cold against my collarbone, and a navy dress that hugged my curves. The restaurant was all crystal chandeliers and velvet booths, the kind of place I'd never afford. He sat across from me, charming the clients, but his foot brushed mine under the table, deliberate, his eyes locked on me. Guy said I can chillin'. Everybody see Neksha cannot bet it's not time and I different many. However as a framer. However as understand.
That mix of allure and guilt is striking. How did it affect you long term?
It made me question everything. My worth, my choices. I'd always seen my beauty, my body as tools of strength, things I'd honed through discipline. Now they felt like liabilities, things he'd weaponized. I stopped wearing jewelry, started hiding my figure under baggy sweaters. I felt like I'd lost my identity, like I was just his creation, not Emily anymore. I'd lie awake imagining a life where I'd said no that first night, wondering who I'd be.
That's profound. Can you share another moment that tested your resolve?
A team meeting, 16 months in. I was leading a project, feeling a rare moment of pride. James walked in late, sat across from me, his eyes never leaving mine. After, he called me to his office, said he needed input. He locked the door, pulled me against him, his hands under my jacket, whispering how I was his best asset. I pushed him away, said I was done. He smirked, said, "You'll be back, Emily. You need me." He was right. I went back, because the next day he gave me a raise, and I couldn't afford to walk away.
That's chilling. How has this shaped your trust in others?
It shattered. I don't trust colleagues. Every smile feels like a mask. I don't trust HR. I overheard someone dismiss a complaint about James as hearsay. I don't trust men. I went on a date, flinched when he touched my arm. Most of all, I don't trust myself, my judgment, my choices. I thought I was strong, but I feel like glass, ready to break at any moment.
That's a deep loss. Can you share another encounter that captures the affair's toll?
A late-night strategy session in his office, 17 months in. The city was quiet, fog pressing against the windows. He'd sent a car, a bottle of wine waiting on his desk. I wore a dress he'd chosen, burgundy, low-cut, the fabric cool and heavy. He poured me a glass, his fingers lingering, saying, "You're the only one who gets me, Emily." His hands were on me, the wine bitter in my throat. I felt like a stranger in my body, going through the motions. I went home, stood in my shower until the water ran cold, wishing I could wash away the last year.
That's heart-wrenching. How has this impacted your ambitions long-term?
My dreams, running a team, starting a company, are tainted. Every promotion, every raise feels like a chain. I imagine 10 years from now, still his secret, my soul hollowed out. Or leaving, starting over, but his shadow follows me. I look at my life, nice apartment, designer clothes, and it's a cage. I've lost the fire I had, the belief that I could do anything. Now every step feels like his victory, not mine.
That's dark. Can you share one more scene that captures the affair's complexity?
A weekend in Lake Tahoe, 18 months in. He'd called it a team-building retreat, but it was just us. A cabin by the lake, snow dusting the pines. He'd sent a fur-lined coat, a silver dress that shimmered in the firelight. We sat by the fireplace, his arm around me, talking about his stress, his legacy. For a moment, I felt close to him, like I mattered. But then he got a call from Eleanor, stepped outside, his voice soft as he told her he missed her. I sat there, the fire crackling, feeling like a ghost in his life, my reflection in the window a stranger.
That's haunting. Where are you now emotionally?
I'm falling apart. I want to expose him, to scream it from the rooftops, to save whoever's next. But I'm paralyzed by fear, by shame, by the life I've built on his money. I think of Eleanor, her kids, how they'd see me. I think of my future, staying silent, getting richer, or speaking out, losing everything. I don't know if I'm brave enough to choose, but this is eating me alive.
Your courage in sharing is immense, Emily. Thank you. Listeners, this is Confessions Unraveled. Stay compassionate, stay strong.